Hello and welcome. Today we will talk a lot about Azure network connectivity. By the end of this video, you should have a better understanding of how systems connect to systems and how to secure them. On my left hand side here, you can see two gentlemen. We have this gentleman and that gentleman who work from home. Now, these guys could be developers, okay? And they need to work on some files serving an application. Now, to do that, they need access into the systems, and the system is located on Azure. So you can see a storage account here. This symbol stands for um, a storage account, and let's say, all right, I'll call it storage account. Now, by default, okay, by default, when you create a storage account on Azure, public network access is enabled from all networks. By default, storage access from the internet is enabled from all networks to your storage account, and majority of the provisions from Microsoft would by default enable access from the World Wide Web. So the moment you provision a storage account and you go to networking and you check public network access, you see it's enabled. Now, to prove that to you, let's just quickly show you what it looks like here. So I have a storage account here. And the storage account, I have gone, there's a storage account, as you can see here. I've gone to networking on the security networking, and then I've checked connectivity. By default, access into the storage account is enabled from all networks. Now, if you are a good engineer, you know that this is not the most secured way of accessing resources. And so it's the best practice. There are things you can do to ensure that the security is enabled on any connectivity from outside into the storage account or from within your Azure networks. So how do we connect then? John and Michael John and Michael will connect via the public internet into the storage account. Now, that connectivity has been enabled by default, like I said from the beginning. But one thing they do is that they use something called a connection string, which is a security that permits John and Michael access into the storage account. Remember, the storage account hosts many things. It hosts a blob, file shares, or file, it holds a queue and a table. So a storage account can host other things. If I want John to have access to this blob called X, I will need to create that access almost like a key to give John the authorization to connect to this resource and consume that data that comes from it. Okay, write and consume. Or if it's just a blob, really, just to view what's there. Okay, now what I need to do is demonstrate how from the public internet I can write to the storage account securely, and also later on show you how to get a same storage account to talk to systems within your Azure network, as you can see on this right hand side here. Okay, which is a secured way to do it. So what I've done is I've written an application in Python, which you're going to use to now talk to our storage account. Now, let's go back to Azure again and can do Control O. We have containers here, okay, which we know they call blobs. Okay, and you can see that I have written a created container or blob called store.json, and in it I have a file here. And when I click on edit, I can see the data in the file. It has my name, the date of entry that happens to be 2 days ago. Okay, but how did I get here? All right, so let's go back to the containers. My application would need this connection string to write to this container, call container, your container name. Now I'm going to call my container public access. So I'll call it public access. Let's see if I can put a hyphen in it. Yeah, support hyphen, public access. Okay. So I'll not save that yet. Let's go ahead and look for the connection string. Now, to get to the connection string, you go into security networking and select access keys. And when you come here, you click on show, and then you see this string. Copy that string. Open this connection string. And paste it here. Now, what this means is you're going to write to this storage account, this account key, which is authorization really, and it goes to this endpoint for storage. Okay, you see this is actually a storage account. We're dealing with block containers here, and it's going to create a container called public access. Then I will write a file to it with the name I specify once I do it. What does it do? What does it mean? When we go back to our drawing, what this means is I will now have an access into this storage account to a container. Let's call it container public access X. And this access needs to be secured. So the security is what we call the connection string. Okay, I'll call it CS strg. And this is how the storage account network-wise can identify the source as an authorized person who can access resources on that container called public access. All right, or let's say X, container X. All right, so let's go ahead and try to see that works. So public access, let's go to our program. Let's do save, Control S, and I'm going to click on run. So it's going to ask me for an input. I'm waiting for it. It says enter a name. I'll say Michael Andres. All right, that's the name of this person. And it says data is written to this file in the container called public access, which was not there before. We only specify that here. Yeah. So let's see if that's true. I go back into Azure. I'll go into my containers. And there it is, public access. We have JSON file as you saw it here. It has BD ends with 40, BD ends with 40. When I click into it and I click on edit, I see Michael Andres and the date of entry and time. So by default, you can connect to your storage account over the internet, but with a secured connection string. Okay. So what we've done is we have created a folder here, and that folder, we call it public access. We've given access to Michael Andreas to write to this blob in that container, and write a JSON file. Okay, so we've achieved that. Now, this may be a good practice for some people, some applications, but when you are in the enterprise and you want to be quite secured about how you integrate with your storage account, you'd have to think of security first. Now, when it comes to security, you would normally have a workload. Let's say it's a server, and this server has a very important purpose that it performs in Azure for your business. This server has a NIC card that connects to your network. So it stays in the subnet with a NIC connects to your subnet. Subnet sits in this VNet. And then from there, your VNet can also talk to different parts of Azure. Now, you have the ability to actually integrate virtual networks access into your storage account and deny public access, the default public access to your storage account. Okay, so one more time, you are allowing this VNet access into your storage account. Now, when you do this integration or you allow the VNet, what happens is Microsoft Azure creates something called a service. And that service is really saying that I know about the subscription and about this network, and I want to give them access via my Microsoft network somewhere for a particular service and connect to storage accounts securely. Okay. And on Azure, this is what it looks like. We've done this already now. When I go back to the storage account, let's clear the screen there. When I go to storage account here and I go into networking, waiting for it, you see that I have Microsoft network routing, internet routing, and I've got firewalls and virtual networks enabled from all networks. I don't want to do that. So what I'll say is I want to enable from a selected virtual network an IP address. When I do that, I can actually type my home IP address, this one here. I can type it here or just force it to add automatically. And then for my location, I can connect to the storage account. But I cannot specify another IP address, maybe the IP address of John or the IP address of Michael. So let's say the IP address of John was 20.x and Michael one's was 40.y. I can allow just 40.y access to the storage account that is coming from the internet, and I can also allow a specific VNet from the Azure to also connect. Okay. Going back to this, including the screen, I don't want to add access into this network from a public IP address. I just want a virtual network. So what I'll do is I'll say I want to add an existing virtual network. And it will look for virtual network in your subscription, as you can see. And there's a virtual network here called First Virtual Network. Wow, I like that. Then it'll say what subnet must be allowed to access this storage account. Now, why is it important? I told you from the beginning that you have this important server that sits here and does important things. Yeah. But the server's part on the network is NIC in a subnet. So let's say the subnet is called front end subnet, or let's say back end subnet. This backend subnet is the only one allowed to talk to storage because this server might be writing data into storage. Let's say there's another subnet somewhere in a VNet somewhere in the same subscription. You don't want that subnet and those VMs to do anything with the storage accounts. And so you don't need to integrate those. Let's say you have the same VNet, but you have other subnets, subnets X, subnet Y, and they have workloads which have nothing to do with the storage account. You don't need to integrate the VNet plus all these subnets. So Azure provides you the flexibility to select the subnet you want. For our demonstration, we're going to choose the subnet that we want down here. So the subnet is called front end or back end. Let's say this server is a front end and it takes some information and stores it into the storage account. So you know the code I had on Visual Studio Code. I'm going to put this in that server now. And now I can go on the server, perform the same operation, and it will write my request or my information to the blob or the container. So I'm going to say front-end subnet. Now, I don't have a virtual machine yet. So once I do the integration, I will go ahead and create a virtual machine and make sure it also sits in the same subnet. Then it's allowed access into this network. So this is what it looks like. Your subscription, it will check which subscriptions, whichever one you have, and I have only one. It will check for your virtual network, and then it will check for your subnets that you want to add. I can add multiple subnets. As you saw, you could select one or many. I can select all of them, and you can see backend, front-end subnet, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to remove the backend and leave the front end. Okay, and what you do is, now let's pay attention to this. It says the following networks don't have service endpoint enabled for Microsoft Storage Global. Enabling access will take up to 15 minutes to complete. So once you create the integration, Microsoft will create this endpoint called Microsoft Storage Global, which is the path Microsoft will use for the storage services access in and out. Okay. All right. So Microsoft will create that. Now you'll find that in the subnet once it's done. You'll see this Microsoft Storage Global as a path that was enabled on the subnet. So I'll just go ahead and say enable that. I like that. So now it says Microsoft has created or enabled this Microsoft Storage Global. Okay, and now you have access into this network, into the storage account from that particular VNet. All right, so I've added it now, and I can see it here. You can see your first virtual network and the VNet subnet allowed. So there's a VNet and a subnet allowed, and there's one subnet I can see. And any more subnets, it will show here as well. So this is done now. I'll click on save. And now go out of networking, come back into it, and let's see what it looks like. Now it says that it's not enabled from all networks as before. It's only enabled from selected virtual networks and an IP address. Now I have not allowed any IP address access. Okay, so I'll go back and test my application. Before that, let's go back to the drawing board. What do we have here so far? We have our VNets and this subnets access into the storage account. We have blocked access from outside. And so my application, which I was running earlier here, to create a block, if I try it again, it must fail, because that is to prove that there's no access again to the storage account from the public internet. Okay, let's go ahead and try that. So now let's change it. We have one public access. I'll say also public access locked. That's the name I'm going to call it. But the string remains the same. I'll save this and I'll run the code. Now look at this. Already, it's telling me and it's telling you that we're not authorized to perform this operation. Why? Because we cannot connect to even write this blob or container. That means that the integration has worked beautifully. But what if I wanted to prove that I could also access it from my home address? So what I'll do is I will say allow access for me from my home IP address, and also allow access for this virtual network and subnet. Okay, and then I'll try my code again to see if that works. Okay, all right, let's close that. Let's clear the screen. Now I'll say allow my IP address and save. So now I have my 95.144, my private IP address, and also the virtual network. Both of them can now talk to storage account. Okay. So scenario again is we're going to put greens around those ones who are allowed. Someone is allowed access, and so is someone is my name, but so is this subnet. Okay, they can talk, and I can also talk. Okay, so I can from this machine write something here. I from this machine can also write something here, whichever one I'm allowed to. Okay, let's prove it then. Clear the screen and go back to our Visual Studio Code. Before it did not work. Now let's click on play or run, and here we are. It's running. It's already established a connection already. So I'm now going to say the name is allow access. So let me just call my name. Samuel. So it says it's stored this in the container called public access load. Let's go to Azure and double check that. So when I go into my containers, well, there it is, public access logged. Click on the JSON file, edit, Samuel Apong, and 11:52. Okay, our UTC time. So that is it. This is how you secure connections into platforms as a service when you have a database or you have a storage account or you have a web service plan. You can control who has access into this. Remember, the only requirement is that whatever is writing or making changes must have the right authorization using the connection string. Okay, the right authorization. Now, to prove again that this is going to stop for me now is, let me remove my IP address one more time and do save. Go back to Visual Studio Code and run. And let's see. Okay, it's saved. Maybe it's taking a while to save. Let's see, just finish saving. It's saved now. All right. I'll just type something. Now it took a while to save, so I'll run again one more time. Now you see, so it took a while for that to save. So always give yourself some time. So now let's see if it actually wrote because I was too much in a hurry. Well, I'm not allowed access here because I'm actually even blocked uh, from even accessing any block because networking says I'm not allowed in. Let me allow myself to just double check and see if I can see those files. Okay, go to containers, and I can see the file I created. Oh, it didn't even allow it. It didn't even allow it. And why is that? I have access to this blob. Let's see. If I allow myself now, let's go back again to containers and blob access locked. And these are the two files. So the first file, okay, it took a little while. Yeah, I call it type, and the other one, yeah. So whenever you enable or disable access into the network, give it some time before you get your developers to try access again. because within that few seconds whilst it was looking at, I managed to write a file to it. Okay, so networking wise, go ahead and remove my access again and save. In the next video, we will work on going via private endpoints and instead of just virtual networks. Okay, now let's go back to the network we talked about earlier. When I go into this virtual network and go to subnets, I use the front-end subnet. When you come here, you see the services here, and it says one or more service endpoints for the subnet, and you can see Microsoft Storage Global. This is what Microsoft will create to allow access into the storage account via that path. That is the path. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now. Before we go, take a screenshot of this and remind yourself how things are connected to systems. Okay, catch you later. Bye-bye.